In this demo, we're going to be taking a look at vPlus and Azure Cloud Backup. So if I have an Azure Cloud environment from which I'm running VMs, I can back these up using the DPX vPlus product provided by CalLogic Software. So what I have here in my demo environment is I'm logged into my Azure portal where I can see a series of virtual machines that have already been configured. These are machines that I would like to back up. And what I'll need to do is set up my vPlus server and node components in order to back up this infrastructure. The node is simply acting as the backup gateway for my Azure VM backup. And in this case, I have both my vPlus server and node components installed on a single machine here called Azure Demo, where I can access it via a public IP address that is listed right here. So once I've installed the vPlus server and the vPlus node, I'll simply go to that IP address using an HTTPS URL, and here is my dashboard. So setting up a backup for vPlus and the Azure Cloud environment is going to be very similar to setting up a backup for any other open hypervisor or Microsoft 365 backups. In this case, you're going to need to set up a backup destination, and we can support many backup destinations from file system to object storage based destinations. In this case, I have a Wasabi S3 bucket configured into my vPlus environment. So now all I need to do is configure my backup source, which is going to be the Azure Cloud environment. So I'll go over here on the left-hand side and just select virtual environments from the menu, drill down into my virtualization providers here, and I can see that I don't have any virtualization providers added, so I will need to create one for my Azure Cloud environment. So I'll click on the Create button over here on the right-hand side, select Azure Cloud as my environment. Here's where I'll specify some parameters that I will need to use to access my Azure Cloud service. So I'll go ahead and fill in my client ID, client secret, subscription ID, and tenant ID listed here. Now once I have these parameters filled in, what I can do is select the import-export mode, and this is the way in which the DPX vPlus proxy will connect to that Azure Cloud source in order for backup. So if I want to take advantage of full and incremental backups, what I can do is enable disk attachment change block tracking here, or if I just simply wanted a full copy, I can attach that VM copy to my vPlus proxy node for the backup. And the default node configuration will specify how the data is backed up from the vPlus node perspective itself. Just want to make sure that the vPlus node has access to that Azure Cloud environment. So you will need to install the proxy VM or the vPlus node in your Azure Cloud environment, which I have here. So I'll click Save, and what's going to happen is it's going to ask me whether or not I want to run inventory synchronization of the virtualization provider. So I'll go ahead and select yes here. And in my workflow executions console, what I'll see is a new inventory synchronization task running and inventorying the VM instances within my Azure Cloud service. So once my inventory synchronization has completed, as you can see here, what I can do is now go under the virtual environments instances, and I should see all the VM instances that have been cataloged from my Azure Cloud environment, and you can see here that these will match the virtual machines that are listed in my Azure Cloud portal here. So at this point, I can define a backup against any one of these VMs or all of them just by simply creating a backup policy against it. So one thing I will do is click on the backup policies underneath my virtual environments here. I can click the Create button to create a new backup policy, and I'll just call this backup policy after the Windows VM that I am backing up. And then just simply drill down into the virtual environments that I want to back up. In this case, I will back up just that WinDemo1 server listed here. So after clicking Save, this will be associated with a backup policy. And at this point, I can kick off that backup policy just by running the backup icon here. I can also schedule that policy if I want to. I'm going to do an ad hoc backup directly from the instances screen where I just click on the backup icon over on the right hand side here and select the type of backup, define priority, where, when I want it to start, etc. So clicking on backup, I'll submit the backup task here. And as it is running, we can see that the backup is broken up into two separate phases. The first phase will be the export phase, from which we are copying the data from the Azure cloud environment and storing that into a staging space on the vPlus node component. Once it lands on the vPlus node component, there's going to be a store phase from which we are going to export that data to the backup storage location of our choosing, which is the Wasabi S3 backup destination that we chose previously. So you can see here that the export has completed, and now we're in the second phase of the backup operation, which is the store phase, and this is where it is going to be written to our backup destination. And now you can see that our backup is complete. I did get a failure here with regards to the backup cleanup of older snapshots that might have existed, which is why it finished with a partially finished, but the backup itself is now stored on Wasabi storage in S3 object storage in the cloud. So what I can do now is just go into my instances, and if I wanted to restore from this instance, I would just refresh my screen window here. I can see that there was a last backup date and time with a backup size here, and I can just click on the restore or mount button depending on what type of restore I wanted to perform. A restore would allow me to restore the entire VM back to the Azure cloud environment, whereas a mount would allow me to mount specific virtual disk into an existing vPlus node or VM that I have out there within my Azure cloud environment. So I hope this video helps you in your search for having an Azure cloud VM backup strategy using DPX vPlus. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit our website at www.callogicsoftware.com. Thank you.